Okay, let's dive in. We're not going to start on Earth. We're going to start in the deep quiet of space. Because our story begins with a question that kind of echoes in that emptiness. A question that might just hold the key to our entire future.
Where is everybody? It seems so simple, right? But this question, first thrown out there by the physicist Enrico Fermi, actually points to one of the biggest, most profound paradoxes of our time. It's called the Fermi paradox.
I mean, think about it. There are up to 400 billion stars just in our galaxy, and we think there are billions of planets out there that are a lot like Earth. The universe should be absolutely buzzing with advanced civilizations, but when we listen, all we get is silence.
So why the silence? Well, there's this one really chilling theory for it, called the Great Filter. It suggests that there's some kind of wall, a barrier, that stops civilizations from making it to the stars. And here's where it gets really scary. What if that filter isn't some external challenge? What if it's us? What if the ultimate test for any species with our kind of intelligence isn't about technology, but about whether it can handle its own power without just self-destructing?
To really get our heads around this idea, we don't need a telescope. We just need a mirror. So let's examine a potential filter event from our own very recent history, a moment where our whole civilization was basically put to the test.
And that brings us to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Now, the public reason for this war, the one told to the entire world, was presented as a sure thing, an absolute certainty. The claim was that Iraq was a threat to the entire world.
And right here, you can see the massive gap between what was claimed and what was actually found on the ground. The very threat that the entire war was based on, well, it just wasn't there.
So you have to ask, how? How did the most sophisticated intelligence agencies on the planet get this so catastrophically wrong? Was it just an honest mistake, or was there something more going on with the system itself?
And look, it wasn't just one group saying this. 3 separate, massive investigations by both the US and the UK all came to the same pretty damning conclusion. The intelligence wasn't just a little off, it was fundamentally broken.
When you dig into it, you find that a huge piece of the puzzle, especially those terrifying claims about mobile biological weapons labs, it all pretty much came down to one guy, a single informant known to the agencies only as Curveball.
And yep, official reports, like this one from the US Senate Intelligence Committee, later confirmed what a lot of people were worried about. The claims made by Curveball, which were a central pillar for the case for war, were completely made up.
So how does something this big go this wrong? Well, it wasn't just one single mistake. It was kind of like a perfect storm of failures. You had confirmation bias, where agencies were looking for evidence to prove what they already wanted to believe. You had intense political pressure for a strong reason to go to war. The whole system just started turning maybes and possiblies into stone-cold facts.
Okay, but what if we're looking at this backwards? What if the bad intelligence wasn't the cause of the war, but the excuse for it? What happens if we follow the money?
To do that, we have to talk about something called the petrodollar system. It sounds complicated, but the core idea is actually pretty simple. For decades, if you wanted to buy oil on the world market, you needed US dollars to do it, period.
And this sets up this incredible feedback loop. Every nation needs oil, so every nation needs US dollars. That creates this constant artificial demand for the dollar, which, in turn, gives the United States a massive amount of economic leverage over the entire planet.
So then, back in late 2000, Iraq did something that really rocked the boat. They started selling their oil for euros, not dollars. Now you might think, so what? It's just one country. But it was a direct challenge to the financial architecture that supports American global power. It was a crack in the foundation.
And this really shows you 2 sides of the same coin. There's the soft power approach, using things like debt and financial influence to reshape a country's economy. But then there's the Iraq model. That's what happens when soft power doesn't work. You bring in the hard power, the military, to force the exact same outcome.
So, after all of that, what was the final bill for this filter event? The final cost, when you add it all up in both money and in human lives, it's almost impossible to comprehend. Just look at that number, $6 trillion. That's the projected long-term financial cost to the United States alone once you factor in things like veteran care and interest on the debt. It's just an astronomical amount of money.
But the financial cost, as huge as it is nothing compared to the human cost. Conservative estimates put the number of civilian deaths directly caused by the war and the chaos that followed at over 200,000 people.
And the consequences just kept spiraling. The invasion created a power vacuum that directly led to the rise of ISIS. It destabilized the entire region, shattered Iraq's infrastructure, and forced millions of people from their homes, creating a refugee crisis we're still dealing with today.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started, looking out at the cosmos. When you see this chain of events, from the flawed intel to the economic motives to the catastrophic fallout, you have to ask, was this a civilization failing one of its critical tests?
You know, maybe the true danger, the real filter, isn't about outright lies. Maybe the more dangerous moment is when we take intelligence that's shaky and uncertain, and we start treating it as if it's absolute, undeniable truth.
And that leaves us with the final, really unsettling question. The Great Filter might not be some dramatic one-time event. It might be a series of tests we face again and again. And looking at the outcome of this one, we really have to ask ourselves, are we capable of learning from our worst mistakes? Or are we just doomed to repeat them until that cosmic silence is all that's left?